So I think you can go, Sue Ellen. I think most people are in.
Okay, and it's only 7:03, so we're in good shape. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many faces, and I wish we could be in person, but here we are. And I'm president of Watertown Citizens for Peace, Justice, and the Environment, and want to welcome you all, and want to especially thank the planning committee that worked so hard on this under, I think, Jean's leadership, and Todd. I don't want to miss people, Susan, David, folks who worked hard on putting this together. I'm afraid some of you may already know this, or may have even suspected that Katherine Clark is not going to be with us. But we have Tarik Samman, we have Jonathan Paz, and we're thrilled to have you here. And I will turn things over to Todd, who's going to moderate.
Thank you, Sue Ellen, and welcome everybody. I want to add to Sue Ellen's comments just to also my welcome, and we're really glad to see all of you and hope you enjoy being a part of and listening to this debate. I'm a member of Watertown Citizens for Peace, Justice, and the Environment, their Peace and Common Security Group, and the Refugee Support, and I'll be moderating the debate. We, as Sue Ellen referred to, we invited all three Democratic candidates for the 5th District congressional seat and thank the two candidates that responded that are here tonight, Jonathan Paz and Tarik Samman. We're disappointed that Representative Clark did not respond to our efforts to invite her and would have welcomed hearing her responses to the questions that we will discuss tonight. But first, I think I'd like to ask each of the two candidates to take about 3 minutes each to introduce themselves, to share maybe some of their background, why they're running and where they're from, and any quick relevant experience they bring to their candidacy. All in 3 minutes, I don't know, but David from will ring a bell every time the time is up, so everybody will always know. And I'll give it to Jonathan first, and then ask Tarik afterwards to speak 3 minutes, just to introduce yourself. So go ahead, Jonathan. We want to hear that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to the good folks of Watertown for hosting this. It's so important for our democracy to have these conversations. My name is Jonathan Paz. I'm an educator. I'm a union organizer by trade and former Waltham City Councilor. I'm running because we need peace, we need to abolish ICE, and we need to deliver universal childcare, Medicare for all, and we need to stop these endless wars. I am the proud son of Bolivian immigrants who was born and raised here in the great city of Waltham and really the greater Boston area. I did not just wake up overnight and say, I want to challenge the second most powerful Democrat in Congress. I was supposed to run for city council back in 2025 and saw my neighbors starting to get kidnapped and abducted in broad daylight. I saw ICE agents smash vehicles, harass working moms. I've seen people literally live in hiding and in terror because they were afraid of being taken. So I dedicated the better half of 2025 running across the street of Waltham, training people to do rapid response to verify ICE activity, and supporting families who have been separated and shattered by the brutality of our government. And I messed up my nervous system. I started seeing all these terrible things, and I saw that my congresswoman was hosting a town hall. And when I went to go to this town hall, I saw something that really I wasn't expecting. There was about an hour and a half of people waiting to ask questions, and effectively, someone asked, I think, in earnest. I mean, people almost had to shout her down to say, "Can we ask you questions in your own town hall?" And, I think the genuine question that was asked time and time again is, what is the plan? What is the plan to take on MAGA fascism? And second most powerful Democrat in Congress, what is the plan? And in my view, her response was twofold. Number one, there is no plan. And number two, maybe the courts will save us. And I don't know about you, but that is not leadership, in my view. That is not meeting this moment. I could not sleep well at night. So I decided that, there's tougher things in life than running for office. I think there's the normalization of fascism. In my time, in my career that I've dedicated to social justice, I've seen what's possible when government works hand in hand with the people. As a Waltham city councilor, I was able to help fight through COVID to save jobs in the downtown of Waltham. We pedestrianized our downtown. We were not only able to revitalize our local businesses and make sure they could stay afloat, but we made sure that people had rent money. We made sure that the youth had access to Wi-Fi. Also in Waltham, I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to invest in a state-of-the-art high school. This did not just happen because people got along. This happened because we were able to work through our differences. I'm also very proud of the work that I've been able to do with Mass Not for Sale. When Uber and Lyft came in to buy a labor law. Oh, 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you,
work on the
Jonathan.
timing there, but
I appreciate we'll have much more time as we go along. And Tarik, could you also take your time a little bit to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Tarik Samman. I'm a researcher at Harvard Law, a union organizer, a war survivor, and the son of Syrian immigrants. I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts. My father came to America chasing the American dream. And he came here, he went to UMass Lowell, he studied here, and the plan was they're gonna start a family, they're gonna buy a house and start a stable life. But unfortunately, after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, my family became the target of harassment and attacks. There's a story of my mother and my grandma being spat on the street of Massachusetts. There's a story of my father being surveilled just for being a Muslim. And going through that experience, my family decided that America is no longer safe for their children. So they decided to pack their stuff and move back to the Middle East. We moved to Syria, and unfortunately, shortly ever after, the Syrian civil war started. And we lived through the horror of war in Syria. And in Syria, every single family who lived through the war, they either had somebody who died, they had somebody who was thrown in prison, or they had somebody who had to take the boat of death to Europe seeking refuge. And living through that experience of war, my family decided that it's time to move again, so we had to sell everything and move back to America and start life from scratch. I came here, I finished my high school in Texas, I went to California, and then we moved to California shortly after because my father found a job there. I went to community college, I finished my schooling then in the University of California, Irvine, where I got a bachelor's degree in political science. And then I went to Columbia University where I did a degree in data science. And then afterward, I got a job offer at Harvard Law as a research associate, and I came back home here in Massachusetts. And during my time at Harvard, I became a union organizer. I helped unionizing for an organization called Harvard Academic Workers that represent 3,000 workers at Harvard. And also during my time at Harvard, I witnessed the repercussion of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. I've seen students being attacked. I've seen Harvard being attacked by the Trump administration. And I've also seen our representative being weak, Katherine Clark specifically being weak, not being able to fight, not being able to defend our school, our student, our immigrant. In fact, she was part of the problem, especially with the Anti-Semitic Awareness Act, which is an act that equates criticism of Israel with being anti-Semite. And living through the experience of Harvard, living the experience of war, and seeing how the Middle East is again on the news, seeing how the Muslim community is again in the news, seeing how Trump is again on the news, I felt part of my responsibility with somebody like story like mine to run for office and bring my voice forward and bring our generation voice forward and fight for them. And that's why my main message for this campaign is a war survivor who's running to bring our money home to invest in healthcare, education, infrastructure, elder care, and in our communities.
Thank you very much, both of you, for the opening statements. I appreciate it. I just want to say a little bit about the structure of the debate tonight before we start the questions. There are three major parts of the debate. The first part will involve each candidate taking turns in answering some prepared questions that were sent to them. Each candidate has 2 minutes per question, and then if they want to respond further, they can have 1 minute more. And we'll also alternate for each question who speaks first and who speaks second, so everybody gets a fair amount of times. The second part of the debate will involve the candidates alternatively responding to a few questions, depending on time constraints, that they have not seen. And they'll have 2 minutes per question to respond there without the extra minute, but they'll have the 2 minutes. Finally, the third part of the debate, which I hope will be around 8 o'clock, so we finish at 8:30, will involve audience questions that can be directed at either or both of the candidates. Jean Trebek will recognize questions from audience members that press the raise hands button on the computer or device that they're using. And we respectfully ask the audience to keep your questions brief, rather than making lengthy statements so that we have time to hear more questions and answers from the people in the audience. David Fram again will ring a bell to tell candidates when their speaking time is up. We also ask that audience members hold their questions in the first two parts of the debate and ask them in the third audience participation part. Thanks. And let's start now with the prepared questions. And I'm going to just start asking Tarik first. What issues do you see as the most critical for Congress to address, and what is your position on them? And now you can go.
There are three main issues that I think very important right now. The first one is foreign affairs and affordability. And for me, I connect them together because for me, they're interconnected. And the second one is money in politics. And the third one is immigration. When it comes to foreign affairs and affordability, it's not a lie that we are in debt because of all the wars that we got ourselves involved to in the Middle East. It's not a lie that we're sending money overseas to Israel that has free healthcare, while our current citizens right here don't even have a broken healthcare system. It's not a lie that we need to direct that money toward the affordability crisis that we are struggling with right now, toward the affordability crisis that unfortunately brought us Trump, and toward the affordability crisis in order to invest in our communities, in our youth, and our elder care. So that's the first issue. And the second one is money in politics. It's not a lie that almost all the Congress representatives right now in office are compromised by money, are compromised by special interests, by AIPAC, by corporate PACs. And I think that's the reason why we can't pass any of our own agendas. That's the reason why we're sending billions of dollars to Israel. And that's the reason why we need to fix that first in order to pass our own agendas and do real change in Congress and our country. And the third one is immigration. I'm son of immigrants. I care about immigration, and I think immigrants bring fresh blood to our country, the same way we need fresh blood to Congress. And we need to fix our immigration system. We need to make it more humane. We need to abolish ICE that have been attacking our immigrant community. And we need to make our immigrant system more, feasible, faster, and more efficient.
Thank you, Tarik. And Jonathan, can I get you to respond now to the same question too, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we're living in a very serious time in our country's history. I mean, I think we have three existential crises that are impacting our generation. Number one, it's climate change and potential climate extinction. We have the threat of nuclear proliferation, world war, if you will. And now we have a new frontier, a new existential crisis, which is fascism. Unbridled. So these are the three broad existential issues. So for me to tell you that there's these three quick solutions would be, not very simple. But I do talk a lot about we have 2 years under the Trump administration. The question is not if the Democrats will take back the House. The question is, what do we do with that power? And I talk a lot about, number one, stopping the war machine and stopping the ICE machine. We can have the votes to leverage and stop money from flowing and continuing to not only make our lives more unaffordable, because every bomb that we drop in the Strait of Hormuz is jacking up our gas prices here, right? Beyond the immorality of that war, it is causing an affordability crisis here at home, but it's also not answering the questions, not providing real solutions here at home. And the third thing that I want to talk about is, getting money out of politics. I mean, I think we need to make sure that we're not only overturning Citizens United, but we are developing a progressive, broad movement across the Democratic Party, so then we're able to bring in these broader, actual, deep, systemic solutions to these, not just patchwork solutions, to these deep crises that are facing our country.
Thank you. And Tarik, let me ask you first, do you want to add another minute to what you said? And then Jonathan, the same thing afterwards.
No, I think my answer was sufficient. Thank you so much.
And how about for you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about immigration and abolishing ICE. I'm happy to do that every day, all day. But I do just want to mention that, ICE is not just developing an immigration crisis where they're conducting what is pretty visibly an ethnic cleansing in our country by literally kidnapping people of color across the country. But now they're using ICE as a tool to circumvent our civil liberties. They're weaponizing this agency, this paramilitary agent group of thugs, to go after people expressing their right to freedom, to go after people who are protesting a genocide abroad in Gaza. So I think it's important that we see ICE as also an existential crisis, not just because it's hurting our immigrant neighbors, but because it's how they roll back our rights, how they roll back against our ability to resist, organize, and quite frankly, have a democracy.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm going to move to the second question. Again, Jonathan will start reverse order and then Tarik. Who are the Congress people, current or candidates, you could work with on each of these issues that you've mentioned? And have you been in touch with them? So I ask you first, Jonathan.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, so I think I'm a big fan of Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, who I'm actually in community with. I'm part of a leadership group called Mi Gente, and folks at Mi Gente were able to not only help her get elected, but also to amplify her Melt ICE Act, which I think is what I mean when I talk about abolishing ICE. It would essentially not only disband this agency, but it would actually help bring in immigration reform, create the structure for us to have a pathway to citizenship. Sister Ramirez is amazing. In terms of, I think about stopping these endless wars, I think about Congressman Khanna, who is actually a very impactful legislator, being able to work across the aisle. I mean, his ability to release the Epstein files is a testament to what is possible when we can work across ideologies and just focus on the issues. And I think also about Congresswoman Presley, who I think doesn't get enough credit. You know, Congresswoman Presley got elected not taking corporate PAC money, not taking APAC money. I think that she is a progressive beacon of us not only being able to get money out of politics, but to also elect real progressive champions that will actually fight back against fascism.
Thank you. Okay. And Tarik, how about your response to that question?
So there's this guy, he's running in Florida. His name is Elijah Manley, if you guys are following the race in Florida. And I got in touch with him. He's young. I think he's my age or younger. And we've been in constant communication. And, I would love to work with him, hopefully in Congress, because as I said, our youth need a voice in Congress. I always tell my volunteers, if you're not my young volunteers, if you're not on the table making the decision, then you're probably on the menu, and that's why it's very important for the youth to have a voice in Congress. And the second person I would love to have a relationship with as well is AOC, especially with her Green New Deal that she proposed in 2019. It's a bill to fight climate change, but unfortunately, due to the control of oil industry in our Congress, the bill didn't go so far. And another guy, also Rouhana, because I think he's one of the best Congress representatives when it comes to fighting money in politics. He's been very vocal against it. And he also been very vocal with international affairs. He went recently to West Bank in Palestine, and he investigated what was going on there. And another person as well is Ayana, because given that we are next to each other when it comes to our district, she's in District 7, we're in District 5. I would love to work with her on immigration because District 7, District 5, we have a lot of immigrant family who have been targeted by ICE, who have been targeted by our government, especially, the Haitian, the Syrian, recently with the TPS. And these are the Congress representatives that I would be honored to work with, hopefully in the future.
Thank you again. And again, either of the two of you want another minute?
I think
I'm excited for questions from the audience.
That's going to come. Don't worry. We'll have a long period of that. But any elaboration? Otherwise, I can just go on to a third question. You want to say something? No. Okay. How about you, Tarik?
You can go to the next question.
Okay. How would you make your voice heard in Congress? And that would be Tarik first and then Jonathan.
Well, I think there's three things you need to do. Locally, you need to be very present. You should have a relationship with your organizers. You should have a relationship with your local businesses, which is something that my campaign has been doing. So far, we got the support of 50 plus local businesses who support our message. And you need to have town halls. You need to have accessible business hours. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me that Katherine Clark business hours is between 9 and 5, and they don't operate during the weekend. Yet our district has a lot of young families that work between 9 to 5. So when would they have enough time to reach out to you? So that's locally. You need to be very present. Second, federally in Congress, you need to be willing to fight back your party and defy the leadership when they're voting against American interests. You need to be vocal about it. And you need to be courageous enough to work with the people on the other side of the aisle, especially when you're working together for things that put America first, for things that doesn't compromise your principles, and for things that, gonna benefit the country. And the third thing that you can do as well is in Congress, you have the power of oversight. So Congress, as a branch, it can have oversight over the other branches. It can investigate the executive branch. It can investigate the judicial branch, which is something what Rohani was doing. And I think in Congress, I would do my best to investigate both branches and make sure that none of them are doing things that are unconstitutional.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jonathan, what would you say to that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things. I mean, I think it all starts at the local level. I think we need to make sure that, if I'm going to go take a courageous vote in Washington, D.C., I want to make sure that I'm locked in step with our district. That's why I'm so proud to have had the endorsements from organizations like Mass Peace Action, Arlington for Palestine, Medford for Palestine. We just got endorsed by Our Revolution, Massachusetts. I want to make sure that we are lining town halls, that we have a joint people's agenda that we're going to be able to bring to Washington. I'm very much inspired by the model that Congresswoman Presley has done around student debt. She was so effective in organizing within the district that she brought the people to students who were impacted by this infinite amount of debt to Washington, D.C. And she was able to organize such a consensus in Washington, D.C. that President Biden had to do something about it. And we all know how that went. It wasn't, we weren't able to do it through executive action. The Supreme Court got involved. It was a bit of in my view, a moral fiasco. But I think that is an impactful model that we can replicate, which is organizing within the district, bringing the district's voice, especially as it concerns not continuing these endless wars, especially as it concerns having peace with justice in our lifetime. I think it's also important to work across the greater Congress. I'm very proud to have an extensive national network, having done work with Mass Not for Sale. I'm very much connected with labor unions across the country. I think these are the type of coalitions, these are the type of stakeholders that we need if we're going to be able to pass a Green New Deal for public housing, if we're going to be able to deliver immigration reform. Thankfully, I've had an extensive career in immigration advocacy. I'm familiar with a lot of the national players. I'm also familiar with a lot of the labor unions at the national level, because again, we were able to take on Uber and Lyft when we were outspent 100 million to 1. So it's this type of stakeholder building across the country, working within the district, and also being able to work Congress itself. We want to develop a new progressive caucus. We can call it the Squad 2.0. Sorry.
Okay.
A little bit long-winded here.
No, that's fine. Either of you want another minute? It would be Tarik and then Jonathan, but
Yeah, one thing I want to mention is the story that happened to me throughout the campaign.
yeah.
Is that I came across this real estate agent in Medford. I'm not gonna mention his name, but he has like a small business there, and he's from Haiti, and he was telling me about the Haitian community, and I was asking him this question: how can I approach the Haitian community and bring their voices forward? And he said one thing you need to understand about the Haitian community, which is something very relevant to all other communities in our district, including the Armenian, the Persian, the Nepali, the Indian, is that they are very proud. So they would never come to you asking for help. You should go to them, you should introduce yourself, and you should foster a relationship with them. You should help them help you understand their struggles. And that's something, unfortunately, Katherine Clark has not been doing. One experience I had is also I went to this restaurant in Revere owned by an Albanian guy, and he told me, I've been operating in Revere for 12 plus years. I've never met Katherine Clark. And the fact that you came here, you shook my hand, you just 100 plus voters, including myself, my family, my relative, because you were willing to show up and come here to listen to me. So this is a very important thing to also put in mind when it comes to building connections.
Thanks, Tarik. And how about for you, Jonathan? Any other comment on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make a note, when you're taking on a multi-million-dollar coalition like Uber and Lyft, like those are the type of pressures that we're going to be facing as a district in Congress all the time, right? We're going up against special interests, people with dark money, deep pockets. And the way that we can overcome that is by having coalitions that expand from the AFL-CIO to the SEIUs of the world to the teachers union. And I'm just so glad to have had that experience, having worked with them and knowing exactly how working people are actually organizing and developing electoral politics to have a future, to make sure that we're pushing for, patches in a broken system. I think a lot about healthcare, and how we're going to be able to deliver Medicare for all when we have literally big pharma and the health insurance industrial complex pushing back and wanting to make sure that we're constantly, getting scraps on the table when we should be getting, they're putting breadcrumbs on the table and calling it dinner when we should have a universal healthcare system, what we call Medicare for. So I'm very excited to bring that experience and that type of network to this position.
Thank you again, both of you. For question 4, which Jonathan would start, what steps could Congress take to move the country away from militarism and toward diplomacy to resolve international disputes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a broad answer to this, and then there's like more specific. I can talk about this all day, but I think broadly speaking, we need to follow our own laws. We need to get back into international law. We need to respect the United Nations and make sure that we're a complying and active part of the International Criminal Court. What's remarkable is just how fast the Trump administration has been able to beat the drums of war, and how weak and how complicit democratic leadership has been, dragging us into a war in Iran. So what I think is important is to be able to not only follow our own laws, and that means that we're going to respect the Leahy law, that we're not going to support, fund, and abet countries that are committing that are systemically violating human rights. That means that we're going to sign on to the Block the Bomb. We're not sending endless amounts of money to the genocidal state of Israel. We're not going to continue funding a genocide. We're not going to enable further genocides, which is what's happening right now in Lebanon. And we're going to be able to call a genocide a genocide. I think, it's important for us to at least speak truthfully about what's in front of us, but also being able to develop a broad consensus that our money should not go to these reckless and stupid wars, that we should be able to be honest with ourselves and say, maybe we should take a step back and hold these war criminals accountable, and maybe we should support an international process where we can actually restitute and support and provide some justice to the people that have been afflicted. So I think it's important that we follow our own laws, we put international law back on the table, and that we hold ourselves, our own government, and that we hold our own country accountable for these things, especially because there's people right now in our State Department who clearly want to continue and drag us into a further world conflict. So I think if we're going to be the Democratic Party for Peace, we're also going to have to start rejecting openly APAC contributions.
Thank you very much. And Tarik, if I can hear your answer to the same question. Thanks.
So, as somebody who grew up in Syria during the Syrian civil war and was at the receiving end of the failed American foreign policy toward the Middle East, I understand the Middle East politics, the Middle East complexity, the Middle East cultures and countries. And I would say the first thing that the United States must do in order to signal to the world that, hey, we're going through the route of diplomacy, is to stop sending money to countries that have involved in genocide, countries that involved in human rights abuses like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, Jordan, and Egypt. And you need to redirect your way from spending money there to spending money at home first, and as well, and Israel as well. Oh gosh, I'll be attacked by this. And the second thing is we need to cut the budget of the defense, the Department of Defense. We need to take an audit. We want to make sure that we don't increase that budget every single year. And we want to make sure that we limit our involvement in the arm race, because it's going extremely dangerous in the last couple of years. And the third thing as well, we need to limit the power of the president and stop him from getting us involved in wars that he should not be allowed to do so. Especially, you've seen what happened in Iran, you've seen what happened in Lebanon, you've seen what happened throughout the Middle East, and it always comes to the decision of the president himself.
Thank you. And anybody wanting the 1 minute extra, Jonathan first or Tarik second?
Yeah, I want to just say one thing that number one is we made a documentary about how we've gotten to this place. I think as the complicity of the Democratic leadership, we made a documentary about our incumbents' role in whipping up support to send over $20 billion to Israel at a time where every international organization and institution was saying that a genocide was happening in Gaza. And I welcome folks to watch that documentary that's going to be airing tomorrow. But I just want to be very clear. We cannot bomb our way to peace. We cannot bomb our way to peace, and we need to uplift diplomacy.
Thank you. And Tarik, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to add is when we talk about war, we should also talk about the influence of money in politics. I mean, you've seen what happened yesterday in Michigan's race, how AIPAC and the AIPAC affiliated PACs were spending millions of dollars to stop Abdul from entering Senate. And they've done that over the years to put their own candidate who would, prioritize the policies of Israel over the policies of our current country. So yeah, we need to talk about the issue of money in politics and make sure that we limit the influence of these PACs in order to go through a peace, to go through a road toward the peace.
Thank you. And we made it to the fifth question here, and that'll be Tarik first and then Jonathan. What would be your priorities for addressing our climate crisis and transitioning us away from fossil fuels?
Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to limit the influence of all industries and AI in our Congress. I mean, we need to make sure that they are not spending money to elect Congress representative who would, prioritize giving oil industry subsidies or prioritize letting the AI industry building their own data centers that are hurting our climate. And the second thing is that, when it comes to climate and climate change, we already have bills in Congress like the Green New Deal that we already talked about, that was sponsored in 2019, that has a list of plans like how we can build an infrastructure that more energy efficient, how we can get green jobs, how we can make sure that those who are at the lower income are not getting, polluted air or polluted water. And the third thing we need to do in Congress, but here's the thing I want to mention first is that House of Representatives, you're not involved in treaties, but you can work with the Senate. You'll have an ear with the Senate, an ear with the president to make them work toward the treaty with the international community that could fight climate change. And, unfortunately, with the Trump administration, the first thing he did when he entered office is to end all these treaties. And I think as a Congress representative, I'll make sure once I'm there is to make sure that will never happen again in the future.
Thank you. And Jonathan.
Yeah, so I think we have an existential crisis in front of us, and the solutions need to go as deep as the problem. I think that the American people deserve a green energy revolution. How I think about it is a green jobs program. In Congress, it's called the Green New Deal, but I think it's important for us to have a third industrial revolution where we reinvest back into and we cut down on utility costs by actually investing in clean energy. And that's going to involve us redeveloping industries. Solar and wind come to mind that I think Massachusetts can be at the forefront. We need to spend literally billions of dollars to not only get people back to work, to retrain people for a energy and for a green sustainable economy, but we need to make sure that our education system is following that example. So there's an opportunity here for us to have our cake and eat it. We need to have the political will and the political courage to say this is going to require massive investments in our workforce to make sure that we are not just net zero, that we become an actual clean energy, like a clean energy economy. And I think that this war has exposed that we cannot continue to just rely on fossil fuels because we are at the mercy of the global market. I think we need to become sustainable as a country, get people back to work. And there's a way that this can actually be a win-win in terms of having not only new jobs, but also like our housing stock. So whenever I think about, getting out of this climate mess, I think about how we can reinvest in our public housing. There is a bill called the Green New Deal for public housing where we can develop social housing. And I just want to be very clear about one thing. We cannot just depend on the private sector to save us out of this mess. It's time for us to nationalize our energy sector. We need to be independent. Like this is something that other European economies have figured out. We need to become independent in this way. So this is important. It's important for our government to take a role on these existential questions so that we can actually have a green future.
I appreciate both your answers a lot. And just again, is there anybody, I guess it would be Tarik first and Jonathan second, to add a minute?
Yeah, I think one thing that's very important to mention is that wars are the biggest polluter on this earth. I mean, you've seen what happened in Iraq after uh, our occupation of Iraq, how women were given birth to defected babies. We've seen what happened with the nuclear bombs in Japan. So war is something that we should also be talking about, especially when we start talking about climate change. And hence why it's very important to redirect our effort toward diplomacy, redirect our effort from spending money overseas on wars and bringing it back here at home.
Thank you. And Jonathan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I misspoke. I said, we need 100% clean energy, not just to be at net zero, which is right now the goal in Massachusetts. And we also just need to talk about how big of a scams some of these utility companies are, how much they're jacking up prices. I mean, when I was a Waltham city councilor, we had Eversource. Um, this energy grid that they have here in Eversource, like they just had surges and we had like literal fires happen in people's houses. And as a city councilor, I had to go house by house. I had a fire down the street, and we needed to actually have a press conference to hold Eversource accountable and say, how did this happen? And the lack of transparency would blow your mind. The Department of Public Utilities is not this like regulatory agency that's going to save us. Like we cannot be beholden to what is a energy racket that's happening not only through Eversource but National Grid. They should not be able to charge us what they're doing and to have a infrastructure that is so dangerous and unsustainable.
Thank you. You're both giving us a lot to think about. And now we're going to move to the unprepared questions that you guys have not heard. And we'll see. Well, I'll watch the time and see if we can get through most of them in the same format. With the only difference again is we won't do the 1 minute after. So we'll confine it to the 2 minute answers. So the first question, and this would be for Jonathan, should super PACs and corporate PACs be limited in their financial support of candidates and parties? Or should such donations be totally banned?
Yeah, I mean, we need to overturn Citizens United. I don't think corporations are people. They do not have speech. We need to ban this type of influence. I think it's time for us to have publicly subsidized elections. Zoran Mamdani was able to, upset the corporate machine because, in part, not only did he have a great grassroots movement, but he also benefited from publicly assisted those public funds. So this is the way that we can, as long as you meet a certain threshold, I think this is the way forward. We need to retake our democracy away from this duopoly, but to make sure that money isn't the equivalent of, it doesn't make or break your election. Like we need to be able to have a democracy where it's by the people, for the people, and of the people. We're not going to get there if we continue to have the overwhelming influence of these PACs.
Thank you. And Tarik, to hear your response too.
Well, one thing we can't deny is that we have a Trump because of super PACs. We are involved in genocide because of super PACs. So of course, I think we need to ban them, and we need to rely on public funder for election. We need to enforce rank voting. We need to overturn Citizen United. So I would favor that we ban them, given the thing that they caused us to do.
All right. Moving to the second question, and this would be Tarik first. There's a bill currently in the House requiring all voters to present a photo ID in order to be permitted to vote, with provisions for disabled who cannot vote in person. What impact do you see this having on our elections? How would you vote on this bill and why?
Well, this kind of bill, it has an intention behind it, which is to suppress voters. So I'm against that way of acting in Congress. I'm against anything that could undermine our democracy.
Okay. And Jonathan, what would you like to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's repackaged Jim Crow. It's a way to suppress the electorate. We know time and time again that these types of IDs are really ways to intimidate people of color. They're meant to put people at the margins. It is not a healthy way to conduct a democracy. And it's quite frankly a way to show that really Republicans are quite nervous that they're not going to be viable politically in the future, right? Like there's a massive stain in that party. So I think we need to go the opposite direction with the John Lewis Voting Act. We need to restore the Civil Rights Act. We need to quite frankly, impeach some of our Supreme Court justices, because all of these solutions are a little bit have an asterisk to them, because they could always be struck down by a few Federalist Society judges. So yeah, we need to go above and beyond just saying no to that. We need to have a proactive plan to secure a democratic process, our democracy, our right to vote, and never allow these types of bad ideas to even get this far in the process.
Thank you again. All right. And again, Jonathan, for you to start, this is a question about healthcare. There have been many calls for healthcare for all. What form do you see this taking? If we were to have a single payer healthcare system, should it apply to all residents, only citizens, all who are legally in the United States? What way would you work? What would you want to see happen there?
If you have a beating heart, you should have the right to see a doctor. Full stop. Full stop. We need to have the right to healthcare. Like, it needs to be a right enshrined. We for too long have allowed our healthcare system to be rooted in the basis of profit. We have privatized healthcare systems. We have privatized health insurance. That's why we have premiums and deductibles and all of these, jacked up drug prices. We need to have Medicare for all, so then we actually have hospitals that are treating people and they're not turning people away because they have predetermined conditions. And we need to make sure that Medicare for all becomes an opportunity for us to have a healthcare system that is providing livable wages, a right to a union. I saw this firsthand as an organizer with SEIU CIR, where I represented medical residents and fellows at Boston Medical Center and Cambridge Health Alliance, and they threw my residents into the fire during the pandemic. Our healthcare system was collapsing in front of my eyes, and it was in part our workforce was so stretched. We did not have the right protective equipment to protect them. I mean, my doctors were literally their N95 masks. They were heating them up in the ovens to sterilize them. Like, we were trading practices with other medical workers in New York. I think we just need to have a sober approach to this healthcare system, that COVID has taught us a lesson. And that lesson is, we cannot sustain this healthcare system rooted in profit. And we need to have a universal healthcare system that's going to deliver real quality healthcare across to everyone who needs it. And we need to make sure that all these drug prices are negotiated, and that we have a workforce that is trained, that is the state of the art, because that's what Massachusetts has right now. But we don't have livable wages, right? We don't have benefits. We don't have the right to have rights in the workplace. So this is something that we need to finally learn from, and we cannot allow for some. I can go on and on. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Tarik, what would you like to say about this?
Well, it doesn't make sense to me that that the richest country on probably in human history doesn't provide free healthcare to everyone. I mean, I had this story with one of my volunteers who's Italian American, and he told me how his brother went to Italy once and he broke his leg, and then they went and met the doctor and they didn't charge him a penny, even though they're Americans and they are not Italian. So of course I agree that we need a universal healthcare. We need to make sure that people, when they go and meet a doctor, they're not going into debt. And we want to make sure that, it's quite ironic when we send money to Israel that has free healthcare and we don't. I think we should have a free healthcare. It's a no-brainer question at this moment.
Thank you. I should tell you, before we go to the last unprepared question, that you're stimulating lots of good questions that are appearing on the screen. So hold those questions for those people that asked, and try to ask them in the next section, which is coming right away after this question. Okay. This is for Tarik first and then Jonathan. How should surveillance by law enforcement be controlled or restricted to both protect privacy and also protect the people?
Well, as somebody whose family experienced surveillance, whether after the terrorist attacks of 9/11 or in airport, I'm totally against making surveillance as easy as possible for the law enforcement to use. I think there should be very strong scrutiny. I think there should be a warrant. I mean, we've been reading a lot of articles about police officers using, the flock cameras to stalk their exes, and that's ridiculous to me. I think there should be a much more scrutinized way to use the surveillance. I mean, if it was up to me, I think it should be banned.
Okay. All right. At this point, I want to turn over to Jean, asking people to raise their hand on the screen. There's been some really good questions, and that you guys have situated.
Jonathan gets a shot at that question.
I'm sorry I left you out. I apologize. Go ahead.
It's all right. You're doing a great job. But yeah, I mean, I think as someone who has worked in the industry and was duped into working in the industry and realized that there's a whole surveillance industrial complex apparatus, we cannot afford to have these evasive technologies, quite frankly, ruin public safety as we know it. There's this inside in the industry, there's this thing that like more cameras, more ALPR cameras makes people safer. I don't think that's a very serious approach. I think what we're having right now is a surveillance grab by these big tech AI companies that, quite frankly, are creating a state surveillance network in front of our eyes. And I think it's time for us to restore the Fourth Amendment, to have the right to privacy. We need an internet bill of rights. We need a people's AI. So we take intellectual property that was taken away from us by 6 mega CEOs that are running these AI companies, right? And if we're serious about public safety, we need to be serious about the conditions that are producing this in the first place, which is, quite frankly, poverty. A lot of the crime that we see is because people don't have housing, they don't have a good education, there aren't good opportunities for people to have good work, right? And we're over criminalizing working poor people when we have the Epstein class, we have these the corporate crime running amok in our country. Good luck eating lettuce, right? So we need to dismantle the surveillance industrial complex, restore the Fourth Amendment, and be serious about public safety, because we do need to protect the people. It just doesn't require us to constantly monitor and surveil and criminalize people.
Thank you. People? Thank you so much, Jonathan. Now I will turn it over to Jean, and let's all listen to her get people who have questions to speak.
Right. So I repeat, please raise your hand. There are a lot of good questions in the chat, but we're not taking them from the chat. We're taking them from you. So raise your hand and I will call on them in the order I see them. So Nikki Krogan, you are the first person. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello there. We seem to have two progressive candidates running against a centrist liberal. Do you agree that that might split the ticket and actually contribute to Clark's reelection?
And are you directing that for both of them?
Oh, to both. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Whoever would like to go first, it doesn't matter. You both can speak.
I can start. We want to start, Paz? Well, one thing you could think about it is that in our district, there's 500,000 registered voters, okay? On average, Katherine Clark gets around 70,000 votes from these 500,000 registered voters. From the 500,000 registered voters, there are 65% who are independent voters who don't vote in primaries. So our strategy is that we need to mobilize these independent voters, given that Massachusetts primary election is an open primary, and see how we can defeat Katherine Clark from there. The question of splitting the vote is a legitimate question, and I think we need to have a discussion about it.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do. I've brought in, I'm very proud of the work that my team has been able to develop. I mean, we've received some very important endorsements from the movement, right? From the people who supposedly have carried the work, have carried these values, have sacrificed so much to get us to this point where maybe we can beat this AIPAC-backed incumbent, right? So I do think it's a very valid question. And as someone who has been in the movement in Massachusetts for over 10 years, I take these endorsements very seriously. To list a few, Arlington for Palestine, Medford for Palestine, um, the Mass Peace Action. Those are very important people. Our revolution, Cambridge, our revolution, Massachusetts. The list goes on. And I think we're waiting on a few more endorsements, but I don't think that there's an equivalency here between these two campaigns. I am hopeful that, quite frankly, like Tarik has said for a long time to people that he has asked in these endorsement processes, he has said that he made a commitment not to split the ticket. So I'd love to see him do right by his word there, and I think it's important that we not only, address the fact that, these endorsements matter, but also like the field game matters, right? Like these mechanics of campaigns matter. So I think that, it's a valid question. I'm very proud of the work that we've done. And I do hope that we can show unity. We can show that there's progressive unity in the 5th district, that this is beyond one individual, that this is about a movement. And I think we're seeing that from last night's election to Philadelphia to New York, that we are part of a broader movement. And I don't know about y'all, I'm tired of New York having all the fun. I think Massachusetts has something to say.
Thank you.
Great.
Tarik.
Thank you. Thank you. And Peter Lober.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm just wondering, given the importance and significance of this primary, how come others have not actually come in and supported either of you candidates? I'm thinking of Ayanna Pressley in particular. It just surprises me.
Again, I
Okay.
think that's addressed to both of you. So
Could I go first?
has something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. And when we started this campaign, I told somebody, I don't think one endorsement is going to make or break us. I mean, would it be nice? Would it be helpful? Could it definitely ramp up our chances? Yeah. But it's not going to do all of the work. I think that there's an unfortunate reality that, Congresswoman Clark is the whip. She is the second most powerful Democrat for a reason. And within the Democratic establishment, there is a lot of pressure on progressives to to toe this line, right? So I have been in talks with her office. I have been in talks with many people's offices that I will not name, but we have gotten a lot of private encouragement. But I don't think that people are there yet, because it seems like it's like you're not only crossing APAC, you're not just crossing millions of dollars of corporate PAC contributions, you're also crossing the very Democratic establishment.
Thank you. Tarik, do you want to say something on this too?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite surprised. If you study what happened with Ayanna when she ran for office, none of the incumbent in the House supported her, because she was running against an incumbent. And even the Senate, during that time, Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey were in office, none of them endorsed her. She had to prove herself in order to win that election. And we were aware of this as well, and that's why we've been going around talking to local businesses and winning their support. Because, if you want to solve the affordability crisis, you want to work with local businesses and see what kind of problems they're facing and bring their voices forward and help to work together to lower the prices.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is Srinivas.
Hello. Hi. Thank you.
Oh.
I have a follow-up to Nikki's question. Even if a majority of voters agree and that Katherine Clark has to be replaced, and that vote is divided between you, she could still win with a plurality. So my question is, what evidence gives each of you confidence that remaining in this race increases rather than decreases the likelihood of replacing her, which is something that we all want?
Who'd like to take that first?
I'd love to hear from Tarik first, but
Yeah, I can go first. I think Kathleen Clark has not been tested, right? She has not been challenged in a long time, and there is no polls in our district that can tell us who Paz or myself who are on the front runner against Kathleen Clark. And frankly, when it comes to Katherine Clark, I mean, we all agree that we need to replace her because she has been lacking present in the district. She has been lacking leadership. She has been weak. But the question is, who should replace her? And with all due respect to Paz, his work with the flock surveillance is quite concerning. I mean, he worked with the flock surveillance for a year and a half. And it was almost the last thing before he ran for office. It was last year, July 2025, when he left flock. And he wasn't just working for flock, he was also advocating for flock surveillance. He went from a city to another in America, lobbying for the company to install the cameras. And you might argue that he didn't know, but at the same time, the question is, well, ACLU have been talking about flock even before he joined flock surveillance. And there was this warning about flock surveillance. So for me, like with all respect to Paz, as a guy who went around advocating for flock surveillance to be installed in cities across America, and now that data is being used and shared by ICE, I'm not quite sure if he's the right person who I want him to advocate for me in Congress.
Jonathan, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate to take those kinds of attacks. I think, I've been very clear. There's no one who benefits from people like this attacking each other than APAC and Katherine Clark. I've been very upfront about my work, my journey, the optimism that led me to work in that company and then how I made my exit. I mean, it's such a badly kept secret. Like I went on a podcast with 404 Media to talk about the issues within Flock and to talk about why I left Flock and like why people need to resist Flock and how I organized within my city to oppose taking down these cameras. And, it's very unfortunate that this is like a grounded attack towards me. And I think from someone who couldn't raise like $5,000 in the first quarter, I think it's unfortunate. I think that, people should put their ego besides, and listen to the movement. I mean, I've been thankfully endorsed by several organizations who knew about my past. And thankfully, like I have a very strong track record in Massachusetts. I mean, I've been a union organizer to helping pass historic legislation to empower our immigrant neighbors, to beating big tech, and to also, quite frankly, taking on ICE. It's easy to say abolish ICE. It's harder to go chase ICE vehicles and see your neighbors get kidnapped left and right. It's harder to raise $100,000 for your immigrant neighbors, and I still do that work. I helped found the Luce hotline last February. So I think it's important for people to practice some humility and to also, be willing to work with the movement and not make their first political stunt a run for Congress. I'm grateful for the work that we've been able to do here in Waltham. We've built a progressive movement. We've built a progressive bench. And I think that's the kind of viability that we need is people who have a track record, not only winning elections, but winning major battles and building coalitions to win and overcome those odds.
Well, thank you. And our next questioner is Amani Darani.
Yeah, I just wanted to double down on the question that's been asked in terms of if each candidate could provide objective data points to justify being in this race. I think we've heard from both of you, you have a lot of alignments across our values in terms of the progressive movement, but beating Clark is our goal, is the goal. So I think it would be really helpful to hear objective data points from both Tarik and Jonathan in terms of what they're using to justify being in this race when we're 3 weeks out from September 1st.
Tarik, you want to
Yeah,
go
I mean,
first? Yeah, you want to
Yeah, I can go first. So as I said, with my campaign, we've been targeting local businesses. We've been talking to different communities, including the Armenians, the Haitians, the Moroccans. There's a huge Moroccan population in Revere. I've been trying to build in these alliances to win the election because these are communities who have been marginalized. These are communities who have been, the target of attack by the Trump administration and by ICE attacks. And so far we have strong alliances with them. And as I said, I mean, the problem we have right now, there's no polling, there's no, data shows who's the front runner. But when it comes to raising money, yes, I might have, I've only raised $5,000 in the first quarter, but you also raised $20,000 in the first quarter. And in comparison to other candidates like in District 1, Jerome Wallen, who's never run for office, he raised $100,000 in his quarter for March. So you could make the argument who's raising more and what data they could use. But the question is, who would who has a lot of the baggage in the past that might be used against him and undermine his campaign. I mean, I'll just say it, for instance, in Michigan, just because he's a Muslim, he's been attacked a lot on it. And I'm telling you, my issue with Paz is his job with the flock is quite concerning. I mean, we've been talking to voters across the district, and when they discover about his job with the flock, they get a bit hesitant. Well, in comparison to myself, um, I'm a war survivor, and my message is very resonating in the district.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of objective metrics, I think it's remarkable that, we've been able to raise over $100,000 at this point in this campaign. And we've been able to knock on over 50,000 doors. We've not only secured very important endorsements, which again, people who have interviewed both of us have gone in our direction. So yeah, I mean, we're a very scrappy campaign. I think we punch above our weight. And that's, I think, comes with the experience. I'm seasoned at campaigning because I also campaigned with other people. When Nika Lugardo got elected, I was there helping campaign with her. When Senator Eldridge, the most progressive state senator in Massachusetts, was outspent 3-1, I was his field director. I think it's important to bring some of this experience to the table and to actually be serious about, what are the mechanics of elections. Not just go with the flow, not just go with the vibes, but to actually know how to run a real operation and not confuse people. Because viability is a real question, and it's a question that people ask. I'm very happy about the work that we've done. And if GBH serves anything, we're a very close third to these two other people running primaries, but not against the second most powerful Democrat in Congress. Right. And that's the tall order ahead. And I think that's also why we need unity. I think that's why we need to stand united and be, as a progressive community, we need to stand united behind a candidate.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. So Rita, you're on. You need to unmute.
Yes. So there's a question on the ballot this year to recriminalize marijuana. I am very much against that because it has a history of Jim Crow. It has been used to penalize Blacks. But in addition to that, what would be your policy, given that there are other psychedelics that could be useful in other diseases and conditions like PTSD, cancer relief? What would be your policy regarding that kind of healthcare?
Thanks, Rita.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a pretty vocal supporter of decriminalization, the rescheduling of some of these life-saving medicines. I was very much involved in the earlier referendum back in 2016 when we were first decriminalizing recreational marijuana. I think that there's a lesson to be learned of the previous, ballot referendum that was essentially shut down. I think that we need to have, a people's approach, a real human approach to these medicines, and not just be told how big pharma wants to benefit from this. Unfortunately, psychedelics are being, it's like the new frontier for these big pharma and some of these insurance companies to be able to reduce for profits and basically water down the very power behind them and the spiritual benefits to them. So these are life-saving medications that are helping people who have trauma, veterans, and it's important that we have, again, a universal healthcare approach to it and a comprehensive approach to it, rather than allowing the privatization, the recriminalization of it to happen through different marketing means. I think it's important for us to be to oppose this recriminalization of marijuana, but also to think about the broader picture. Why are we being denied these life-saving treatments and medications?
Thank you, Jonathan. Tarik, would you like to comment too?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally against the criminalization of marijuana. I mean, as you said, it's helped a lot of, PTSD veterans. It helped a lot of people, in the community. And there's always this ulterior intention behind these kind of things. And I'm totally against it. I think we need to be careful with these kind of medication at the same time, but at the same time, we don't go all the way and ban it or criminalize it.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, Gene.
Andrew, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, candidates, for being here. Actually, I have a specific question for Jonathan, just following up on the conversation that was had earlier, about Flock in particular and the 404 interview. Jonathan, so in that 404 interview, you claimed that you quit Flock last summer when you learned that they shared surveillance data with ICE, and that you had been asking about this issue and your employer had been lying to you about the use of data from flock cameras by federal law enforcement. My concern is that for years, as somebody who cares about civil liberties deeply, for years, civil liberties organizations like the ACLU had been sounding the alarm about how Flock's network was, in fact, being abused by law enforcement agencies, including those in DHS like ICE. This is something that goes back, long before you started working there. And my concern is that you're now running for a seat in the United States Congress, which is a very serious position. And as a voter, I'd like it if you could help me better understand why or how you were so unaware of this widely reported public issue in the industry in which you worked up until July of last year. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I've shared this, and I'm happy to share again. And I mean, if you want to check out the interview, but yeah, I mean, I think there's this whole like duping that happens when people join the tech sector. When you join a tech company, there's this reality that you're given full information when you're working across many people working across many sectors of a company, but the reality is that, yeah, like Flock has great Flockaganda. And that's something that I kept talking about in the town hall in Waltham. You talk about that. We talked about that in the 404 interview. And it became very clear to me that this technology was very flawed, that there was a broader apparatus, there was a broader analysis. So I was not privy to all these things. And, I wasn't a tech guy. And I mentioned that to people that I wanted to get into the tech sector. And it was like my first real tech job. What I want to just make very clear, Andrew, and also to apparently someone else, is that, I don't think when people run for Congress, when people look to candidates, they're not looking for perfection. I think they're looking for people who are honest, who are willing to be held accountable, and who are able to change course. And those are the three things that I exemplified. I learned better. I held myself accountable. I had to make an exit plan, and I changed course. So unlike some people in this call, like I'm not from very rich means. I don't have family that can just throw $20,000, $30,000 into my campaign. I'm actually from a very modest background. My parents were immigrants. So yeah, I had to make an exit plan. I wish I could have left sooner. But that's just a reality under, very, very corrupt capitalism. We all have to live and survive. And at some point, some people do get duped into these problematic jobs.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next questioner is M. Ladd. Are you there? Yes.
I put my question in the chat so I wouldn't forget it. Going back to the conversation about somebody dropping if it looked like it was going to split. I'm just curious about which one of you guys declared your candidacy first, and for the one that came in second, what made you decide that you still needed to run? Because we don't need two great progressives, we just need one. And like everybody pointed out, we don't want to have Clark back in because people can't agree on who they like for various reasons. And then also, Jonathan has told us about his endorsements and different things. I'm wondering if Tarik has any endorsements. And if you can take this one also, Tarik had mentioned that Flock could be used against Jonathan, and he pointed to what happened in Michigan with a Muslim running. And I wonder how Tarik sees, because a lot of people in this country and state would see him as an Arab, which is no better than being a Muslim around here. So I wonder how he thinks that would impact his chances.
I declared first. I entered the race first. I started an exploratory committee back in August, and I've been researching the district for quite a while. And then in November, I filed with the FEC and I entered the race. In terms of endorsement, we did get the endorsement of courageous candidate. And as I said, we've been going around building relationship with local businesses and different communities. Because for me, I would rather get the support of a local business that's rooted in the district and with local communities that have been, marginalized by Katherine Clark than, organizations that probably sometimes might not have a strong presence in the district. And in terms of the difference between me being Muslim and Paz work with a flock, well, Paz decided to go and work for a flock, even though it was already established that flock has issues in the past. For me, I didn't pick to be a Muslim, although I'm proud Muslim, but I was born in a Muslim family. And if anything, if you've seen what happened in the recent races, Mamdani was able to win even though he was a Muslim. Abdul Sayed was able to win even though he was a Muslim. Anita Allam in North Carolina, she came very close of defeating the incumbent, even
I'm
though
not worried about, I kind of thought that you might be a Christian Arab because of the way that you said that they went after Muslims, because I'm Muslim myself. I'm not worried about anybody being Muslim. I just thought that the way you said that they held it against him as if that wouldn't be a problem for you. But I guess it would be a problem.
One thing I want to add is, like, unfortunately, with the Muslim community, they've been used as a scapegoat after the 9/11 attacks to justify the foreign affairs policies toward the Middle East.
Right, sure.
And as somebody who witnessed that here in America and in the Middle East, I think the perspective and the voice that I bring to Congress is a perspective of voice that nobody shares. Nobody, experienced both sides of the aisle and understand what it really means to have a story like mine. I mean, foreign affairs, the one thing important about Congress is that we control foreign affairs in Congress. And you really need somebody in Congress who understands the complexity of the Middle East. We need somebody who experienced the Middle East. I mean, that's the reason why Rouhani went recently to the West Bank, because he needed to experience it himself. And that's a huge thing that differentiated me from Paz, besides his work with the flock. And you might argue that, okay, well, our campaigns are not, as strong as, the campaigns in other districts, with Patrick Cross or Jeremy Wallen. But, everyone is doing their best, and we'll see how things unfold.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of Tarik until after I endorsed on December 15th. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to have these local organizations and their endorsements. I would never say that, they're not from the district or they're not rooted in the community. I think that's disingenuous and not helpful in the movement. It's not a helpful thing. But yeah, I mean, I just want to mention one thing. I'm very proud to have received the endorsement of CARE Action, the Council on American Islamic Relations. They have supported me in this race. That was last week's announcement. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done with the Muslim community, hand in hand. When I helped for Nicole Musallam in Malden to run for state rep. We were there running a progressive grassroots campaign. When we were there with Mass Not for Sale, working with gig workers, we were going mosque to mosque, and from like Malden to Medford to Boston, because a lot of Muslim people are gig workers, and we knew that they were going to be better exploited, their wages were going to go down, their benefits were going to be removed from Uber and Lyft. And we were able to beat them in 2022 because we built this amazing rainbow coalition, to 2024 winning in the ballot, to 2026 now in Massachusetts, we have the biggest union of gig workers in the country. And this is the type of coalition work that I think is proven and necessary, and the type of experience needed to win this kind of race. Because we're going up against Goliath, y'all, and I think we need to be united. And we need to have someone who brings those kinds of relationships and just doesn't come out of the woodwork and says, hey, I need to run for Congress. I'm starting a podcast. I think it's just important for us to be standing hand in hand and build the right types of coalitions to take on big money, because we have the people, they have the money.
Okay, we have three more questions. David Woodruff.
Hi, switching gears here. For both Jonathan and Tarik, if you were elected, what caucuses would you be interested in joining?
I mean, I want to be part of the, you mean, sorry, caucus? Yeah,
Yeah, what caucuses, like work groups or committees?
Yeah, I mean, the Progressive Caucus is very important. I think the Hispanic Caucus is very important. I'd love to be developing maybe an anti-war caucus, developing an anti-ICE. I think within the Progressive Caucus, I think that unfortunately the term progressive has been a bit co-opted. Unfortunately, also by our Congresswoman, who, I don't know how you can support a genocide and call yourself a progressive. So I'd love to see what kind of coalitions we can build, what kind of voting blocks. And that's really, I think, what we need to do is develop these voting blocks so then we can actually have unity and hold the line against some of these major issues, like stopping this war from escalating, stopping giving ICE further funding, which our Congresswoman did 5 times in her tenure in Congress, to also being able to investigate the Epstein class and having a strong contingent of people who are going to hold those corporations, those criminals accountable, who, quite frankly, are living above the law.
Yeah, for me, I would love to join the Progressive Caucus, of course, and I would like to serve on the Appropriation Committee so I can decide how we spend our money and make sure that's spent in the right way. And unfortunately, a lot of the Congress representatives who serve in the Appropriation Committee, they got caught doing insider trading, including Katherine Clark. There's an article in the New York Times that talk about it, where when she was serving Appropriation Committee during COVID, the Appropriation Committee was allocating a set amount of money to give to a pharmaceutical company for COVID testing. And her husband, before that money went to that company, bought stocks in that company. And then when the contract went public, the stocks went high and they sold for profit. So Appropriation Committee would be a committee that I would love to serve on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Amani?
Yeah, so Tarik, you mentioned something interesting in terms of, maybe not finding as much value in having support of these local progressive organizations that have endorsed in this race. I'm a member of one of those organizations, and we were very proud of the endorsements that we've made. So I wanted to just ask you to kind of clarify that comment, and also as a follow-up to my initial comment, if you could please provide data points as to why you're justifying being in this race at this point. That's kind of a question for both Jonathan and Tarik, but Jonathan did answer the question. So kind of a 2-part question there. Thank you.
Well, when I was talking about organization, I said I would rather win the support of local businesses and communities that have root in our district than organization. I didn't mean progressive organization like yours. I respect the work that you guys are doing, and I've been invited to your forum, and I went there and I talked, and I know you guys. I'm not attacking you saying that you have no roots or whatever. I was like talking about generally. And in terms of data point and why I'm still in the race, well, I already explained. I mean, Paz, he already talked for an hour about his work experience organizing and defending the immigrant. And it's still, for me, I don't understand, how could you not know what Flock is doing and you joined them you were working for them last year. And as somebody whose family struggled with surveillance after the terrorist attack of 9/11, it's hard for me to it's hard for me to trust that he would be the right candidate for me to advocate for me in Congress or even advocate for the people of Massachusetts. And another thing is that, I'm afraid that some of the organization might not, take that Flock thing seriously. And I don't understand why. They don't either mention it on their website or don't take it seriously. And I think it should be taken seriously. Because if Katherine Clark start feeling any heat toward Paz, she will start attacking him on the Flock thing. And that's why I'm bringing it up front for you to consider.
Could I ask a follow-up question to that? The reason why that some people are asking.
There was somebody else who had a raised hand, but seemed to have disappeared. So go ahead.
David Woodruff had his hand raised.
Right. No, that person has already spoken. But there was another person, but gone. So go ahead, Amani.
Yeah, and I'm asking this question as a very concerned member of our progressive communities here with having Clark as a representative. We know she doesn't represent our progressive values. And my concern amongst all of us here, I think, is ousting Clark this September. So it would be really helpful if we could speak about the viability of campaigns and what data points people are using to justify, because I think you're talking a lot about it's other experiences, but I would just love to hear more about your campaign, Tarik, and the ground game and the amount of voters that you've been able to reach and whatnot, because I think that would help a lot of voters decide how to move forward in September.
Yeah, I already mentioned. I mean, if you check the last June FEC report, we raised around $40,000. Paz raised around $58,000. So while we came after him, but it's not like he raised $200,000 like Jerome Wallin in District 1 or the other candidate in the other district. And I question, why couldn't he raise enough money by that time? Is it because his message is not resonating? Is it because his flock history is probably making an impact? I don't know. I mean, you keep asking about the data point. I already explained to you what we are doing. I don't know. I've been targeted at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna take these punches in stride, and I just want to mention one thing, very clearly to people. We're very proud of the work that we've done. I mean, we are, a very scrappy campaign. We've received donations from over 500 individual donors across the district. I'm very proud to say that 91% of my donations are in state. The unfortunate thing we're reporting is that with Blue and a lot of checks coming in, it looks like that, but we actually raised a lot more. Quarter 2 was our best fundraising quarter, which is why we put our numbers out there. I mean, I'm just very proud to have over 50% of my donations come from the district. Like, if you want to believe that the district believes in something, it's like, yeah, we're powered by the district. And I'm just very proud, GBH, mentioned this, but we have probably the best field game in the state. Yeah, we're going up against big money, and Katherine Clark does a lot of work to funnel in dark money across the Democratic Party. She just had a fundraiser this weekend where the minimum ticket was $1,000 and the maximum was $50,000. You tell me if she's going to take your call, right? If that's equal access to our congresswoman. So I think, I'm very proud to have the support that we have across the district, and, the money is following. We don't need $1 million to win this race. We need the people. We need your support. We need to get active. And quite frankly, we need unity. Thank you.
Okay. So we really have only time for, Patty Heyman, and we're getting close to end of time. So Patty,
Right.
please
That's 6
ask your
minutes.
question. Patty, did you disappear?
I'm muted. Sorry, I'm not muted now.
Okay.
So just to be very quick, I suddenly had this thought about King Solomon, who went to God to give up a child and then said Solomon tested them by ordering the baby cut in half. The real mother begged him to give the baby to the other. So where I'm drawing this analogy is we want to get Katherine Clark out. So how do we get a clearer understanding of which of you is really going to capture more of the votes? And then how do one of you say, I don't have enough votes and I need to stand behind this other person?
Do you know any organizations that do good polling?
Yeah,
seriously, we try to get, I think Emerson College has a polling platform, or, they do polling. I don't know how, but that's one that I'm familiar with. I mean, Tarik said several times, we don't have any district polls.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. I don't know how to go about making it happen. Do you have any insider information? Do you have any idea of how you get polling to come into District 5? So then I'll ask Tarik and Jonathan, how do we get polling? Good polling.
I mean, as someone who's run campaigns before, polls are not cheap. I think, our campaign, we're focused on our field game. We're focused on our reach. I'm very proud that we're sending out literally thousands of letters across the district, and we're knocking on thousands of doors a week. So I think, there isn't an equivalency here. There's an equivalency here of access to this debate, right? Because the incumbent is not here, but that doesn't mean we both arrive to this stage with the same level of presence and support. But yeah, I do welcome if there's some independent organization that wants to run a poll. I think our incumbent has run a poll and she's keeping that data to herself. So, that's, I think, very encouraging of the work that my team has been able to do across the district. Because again, I've been known across this district for quite a while. I grew up here. And I think it's just important that we keep in mind the importance of why being involved in the political process is important, why these endorsements are not just handed out for nothing. I think people do their due diligence and provide their support because they do believe in the objective reality in front of them. They don't just dismiss it.
And Tarik, do you have any idea of how it would seem to me very inappropriate for one of your or even both of your campaigns to pay for the polling that immediately casts a shadow on the results. But how do I mean, other
Nyla has a question. I don't know if this is getting to a question, but I think Nyla has a question.
Okay, Nyla.
Yes, thank you so much. Tarik, I would like to ask you the question. Could you ask the 3,000 person union at Harvard to endorse you?
Well, one thing about Harvard is a nonprofit organization. They can get themselves involved, and with the union, I'll ask them. I mean, they're part of UAW. If you understand how the unions work at university, you're usually a local union supported by a bigger union. We call them international union, and this international union support that local union by providing them with the staff and with money, and usually they help them until they get established, and then they take part of the dues. So it would be great to see if they would be willing to endorse us, but at the same time, the problem with the Harvard community is, as I said, it's a university, a nonprofit organization, and they don't like to get themselves involved with politics. Same thing with the churches, same thing with synagogues, same thing with mosques.
I mean, that's just factually incorrect. I mean, the UAW does do endorsements.
Yeah, but like she was referring to Harvard union endorsement, not the UAW itself.
I think you understand the essence of that question.
I think I'd like to know a little more about your work with that union.
Well, the union, I'll tell you the story. When I first joined Harvard, a couple of people reached out to me, and it was a time where the union was already not public yet. They were all working under the radar because they were afraid of Harvard retaliation. And they helped me to organize for them a Harvard Law. The problem that happening is that they'd reach out to Harvard Law researcher or affiliate, and they get like a lot of debate, or they get people who are not interested in unionizing. So I agreed, and I joined their union, and I started organizing for them a Harvard Law. I helped bring the clinical instructors into the union, even though they were planning to start their own small union, and helped create the website for the union. And the website was quite vital for them to collect a lot of signatures. Now, collecting signatures for unions is different than collecting signatures for elections. In election, you need to be in person. With unions, there was a possibility to collect it online. And I helped collect also signatures in person. I went from building to a building at Harvard. And I work with a lot of union organizers. Also been their representative and speaker at Harvard Law. I've been invited by Harvard Law students to speak on my work with the union. And thankfully, they were able to collect enough vote to form the union. And then they had an election. And they're now established. And they're still in the process of the negotiation with Harvard. And they're working on their contract. So that's, in essence, what I did with the union.
Did you also get involved in the encampments, in the organizing with the encampments?
Yes, I was one of the people who slept at Harvard during the encampment days.
Mm-hmm. So we are past our closing time.
Yeah.
I think we should thank both candidates enthusiastically for joining us. We're very happy to have had the opportunity to hear what you had to say. I just saw a question, a raised hand from Jackie Gross. I wonder if we should give her special treatment. Okay. So, but it was, I mean, this was a wonderful forum. It was great to hear both of you speak. And now the question is, how do we go out and get so many people to vote for one of you two that Katherine doesn't have a chance? And then the other thing I'll just throw in there to confuse everyone is, I wonder if this is where ranked choice voting would really be great.
Thank you all so much. It was a great time.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So much for having me.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Can I just add a closing comment too? When you have a debate like this and a discussion like this, one of the things you hope is that you educate by just your answers and you raise other questions and even differences and disagreements. It was all in this. And I want to thank both candidates very much for doing this. I also want to thank the committee that worked on this event, including David Fram and Susan Nye and Jean and Sue Ellen Hirschman, Chirpin, and those also who provided technical help for which we couldn't have done this without. And finally, to our online audience, it was so nice that so many of you came out and you asked good questions and you participated, and both of you guys really did a good job. And I want to thank you all for that.
Well, I'm going to say one more thing, and then you can have the final word. This was recorded, and it will be available. We have to figure out exactly how, but this was recorded. And so if you wish to have, and this, I'm saying this to everyone who's still on the call. So.
And my final word would just be to thank again everybody for being here and making this a really stimulating, interesting evening. And hopefully we do a lot more talking and thinking about all these issues. But thanks again, and to wish everybody good night.
Good night.